Howdy gang, and welcome back to Pool School. It is a wet January morning and we'll take it because we don't get a lot of rain in Arizona, so anytime we get rain, we will take it. Anyway, today's episode of Pool School, I'm going to address a question that I had from one of my subscribers regarding how to actually disable a pop-up system. I've done a 3-part series on pop-up systems, and if you haven't seen that already, make sure you watch it. But I'm going to address the ins and outs and nuts and bolts, if you will, of truly disabling a pop-up system to either not have it work anymore or to convert to a pool vac. So, what do you say we dive right in? Okay, before we get started, I always want to remind you to like this video if you did, subscribe to this channel if you have not done so already, and please share this channel with your friends, family, in-laws, relatives, acquaintances, co-workers, classmates, etc., who have their own pool and are looking to save a buck or two servicing their own pool. All right, so I got a question, I actually received it several times, about doing a more detailed video on how, in fact, to disable a pop-up system. Now, there are some very simple ways to do it, and then there's obviously some more involved ways. And I'm going after the simple way so that you don't have to go out and hire somebody to do it. Plus, I have found myself personally that when I do certain things around the house, sometimes there's jobs that are just best left to experts and people who know what they're doing, so that way I don't create more work and more cost for myself. So these are the simple ways to be able to disable a pop-up system in your pool. Now, one of the things is I have a few clients who have pools that have pop-up systems, but those are functioning. And what I don't want to do is pull those things apart, start pulling the guts out to show you examples, because honestly, it's a pain in the butt to do. So I can show you examples, give you some ideas, and then I'll use pictures to show you the guts of the different types of pop-up systems and the actuator, because that's really important for a pool, and how to disable it. So that's what we're going to do in this video. So we're going to move on now. Alrighty, so you have a pop-up system or an in-floor cleaning system in your pool, and you're wanting to disable it for whatever reason. The first and most important thing, and I'm going to repeat myself on this one a lot in this video, is that you have to make sure that you have an alternative source or return flow source for the return water in your pool other than just the pop-ups. Some of the really old pool systems have the pop-up system tied directly into the return line or the return side, and there's a lot of there's not a pipe. I've seen it rarely in the older pools. There's not a pipe that goes to the regular returns. Now the returns are just those side ports that are on the walls of the pool, inside your pool, and that's usually where your main return flow is going back to. Most pools should have that, even if they have a pop-up system. Maybe they have an aerator, or maybe they also have a water feature, okay? So all of those are on the return side of your pool. But no matter what, you want to make absolutely positively certain, here I am repeating myself a second time already, that you have a way to divert the return flow, or that the return flow has a way that once those pop-ups are disabled, that return flow can flow back to the pool. If there is no way for that to happen, it's going to create pressure in your system, and that could cause some leaks or further damage or blowing your filter. I've seen filters pop like that. So you want to make sure that you have a way to do that. So make absolutely certain that no matter what, you have and have identified a return flow pipe to your pool other than the return flow to the pop-ups, and I'll show you some examples of that right now. One more quick point. Remember what I said earlier, there are very involved ways to do this. You can go and start cutting pipes and hiring a plumber and cutting pipes and adding shutoff valves and all that kind of stuff. But again, those are pretty involved. The more you start doing that, the more you run risks of leaking, and so I'm not going to teach you how to do that. I'm going to teach you how to do with what you have right now to disable your pop-ups. So let's keep that in mind. All right, now we'll get to a pool. Okay, I'm at one of my clients' pools, and I've used this pool as an example before, and I'm going to show you the 2 basic ways that I would suggest disabling a pop-up system. There's really only 3 ways to do it without getting into some very involved cutting and things like that. So if you're looking to make everything aesthetically pleasing and you're not like most people who tend to hide their plumbing for their pool and their equipment, then this video is not going to talk about that. I'd hire a professional to come out and cut your pipes, cap them, bury them, and all that kind of stuff. But these are just quick fixes that you can do yourself, okay? So again, 3 ways. 2 are very simple. 1 involves having to take the guts out, and more on that in a moment, okay? So I'm going to flip this camera around and I'm going to show you an example. Okay, so this is one of my client's pools, and you notice there is the actuator for the pop-ups. Now, there's basically 2 types, all right? There is what they call the low profile, which is like this one. What that means is there's no pipe coming out of the top, okay, or going in from the top. Different companies make different versions. Some of them are gold dome, some of them are gray, but this is considered a low profile. What this means is the return water is coming up through one of these pipes underneath here. And then it's going through, cycling through the gears, and it's opening valves. And then those valves that open, those other pipes, are going back to the pool in certain zones for the pop-ups. So that's a low profile. Some of the low profiles have a feed where the return water comes in through the side of the actuator, and then the zones for the ports are down there, or the pop-ups, okay? The third one is one that's basically a top feed. All that means is the return flow water comes through these pipes, it goes into the top. It comes in through a pipe here, turns the gears, and then the different ports are down there. Same thing, okay? So this is pretty simple. So let's say you've got a system like this, all right? And you notice that this whole section right here, this pipe coming out of here, this is the return section, or the return flow of your pool, okay? This one has a lot of different features. It has a water feature down here. It has a bunch of other things. They're all blocked off because they pretty much remodeled and shut off their water feature, and they don't even use it, okay? These are the 3 I want you to pay attention to. There is a shutoff valve for the aerator, the returns, and the cleaning. You notice the cleaning is open the most, okay? In a valve like this, these wing type valves, whatever pipe it's in line with, if it's perpendicular, if the wings are perpendicular, like they're coming out this way to this pipe, then that flow is off. If it's parallel or in line with it, that means the flow is going. So you notice I have most of my flow going to the pop-ups, see, cleaning, and I've restricted some of the flow to the returns, all right? So that's how I have this system set up. Now, before I go start making adjustments, what I want to do is I want to notice the pressure on this system. So I'm going to fire it up really quick, and I'm going to look at the pressure on the filter. Okay, it gets kind of loud, so I apologize, but you'll notice it's going to fluctuate a little bit. Pressure is going to fluctuate. So if you look at the pressure here, if you look at the pressure, it's fluctuating a little bit, right? So right now, it's about 25, 26. All right, and what's happening is as the water is cycling through the pop-ups and going from valve to valve, sometimes the valves, one valve is closing while the other one is starting to open, and you're going to get an increase in pressure. Did you see that drop? So now one of the valves, it's cycled through, so the valve is fully open, and so that tells me how much pressure was there. And it just continues doing that. So my average pressure on this is between 20 and 25, okay? So I want to make note of that, so that when I shut off the flow to the pop-ups, that pressure doesn't really elevate much more. So I'm going to stop the system for a moment, okay? Now the reason I turn the system off is because it's easier to turn these valves, and you notice these valves have kind of, some of the wings are broken off. That's because when these plastic valves sit in the sun, they just get brittle and they break very easily. So when there's pressure going through them, it's harder to turn them. So I turn the pressure off, okay? So I shut the system off. So I make sure it's not going to turn on. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here and make absolutely certain, and I'm going to say this many, many times, make absolutely certain that this return valve is completely open. So I'm going to turn that to where it's completely open. Now I know that all the flow is going to go through those return valves. Now, if you don't know what a return is, basically return, if you look at your pool, in the pool, and you look around the sides of the walls, you're going to see little holes or little ports. Those are your main returns, all right? Most pools have them, even pools without pop-up systems. This is fully open now. Don't worry about the aerator. I'll do a video on those in the spring when it's applicable. And it's shut off right now because it's not summer and it really wouldn't benefit the pool much anyway. Then I'm going to come to this cleaning one, right? Remember, returns completely open. I'm going to turn the cleaning one and shut it off. It's perpendicular to the pipe, so that means there's no water that's going to go into this anymore. That really has disabled the pop-ups. They will not come up at all. I'm going to turn the filter on and I'm going to take a look at the pressure and see if I've made any damage or caused any problems. Okay, so the filter's on, and if you look at it, it's hovering right around 21 PSI. So I haven't adversely affected the pressure, which is good. If that pressure had gone up substantially, even though this thing is rated, most of these filters are rated at like 50 pounds per square inch, I don't like to use those as a guide because that may be true that the filter can hold that pressure, but some of the joints, depending on how old they are, or valves, could start to leak. So I tend to say you want to kind of see what your operating pressure is and then make sure it doesn't change it that much. So if I wanted to disable this pop-ups in this pool, I just did. As long as that cleaning side is closed and the returns are fully open, I'm done. All right. Now, let's say you don't have the ability to shut this off and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't have a valve that will shut off the pop-ups. Okay, so I'm going to do something. Okay, I'm going to still make sure this is open, but I want you to look at the top of this. Most of these types of pop-up systems, the actuator, there is a run. You see that says run and a pause. Okay, it's a little toggle. All right, what that toggle does is it stops the gears inside, or it stops the paddle wheel from turning, and thus stops the gears from turning. So this one gets a little trickier because if I'm doing a vacuum conversion in a pool, I want to make sure that the pop-ups aren't coming open somewhere and creating a hindrance that the vacuum is going to run into. So I usually have to set it, find where it's coming up through the steps, and then I'll lock it down there. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I would run the system. All right, and I would come back to the pool. I'm going to come over to the pool. I'm going to turn it on right now. Okay, and we're coming back to the pool, and you'll notice the pop-ups are starting to run here. Okay, so I don't know which one's opening yet. Let's see. They're over there. The pop-ups on the far end of the pool are opening up. But what I would do is watch them cycle. Okay, and as soon as I saw it start to cycle to the steps, I would run back to the pool or to the actuator, and I would move this toggle to pause. Okay, I'm shutting it off so you can hear me. I would move this toggle to pause while the openings are on the zone that is the steps. So what flipping this little lever to pause did for me, and there's some that have a little lever you have to lift up, right? There's these gray ones that have a flatter dome and you have a little lift up thing, and that will stop the gears from turning too. But what I've done here is by stopping the gears inside from turning, that left the zone to the steps of the pool open. So I know that those other pop-ups are not going to cycle. It's just going to stay open on the steps, and that way I also have return flow in case something happens. But other pop-ups aren't going to pop up and then get in the way of the vacuum, which I've seen if you have a vacuum that stays in the pool, it can hinder the movement of the vacuum. I've seen vacuums get hung up on it. So that's the second way that I've done it. So now it's just stopped on that zone, and you can stop it at whatever zone you want, okay? But I'd suggest not stopping it in between zones because you want to leave this, you want to make sure that one of those valves inside of those ports is open, okay? Again, this is if I don't have the ability to shut something off like that, which is the flow to the pop-up system itself, okay? And there's my returns, and again, I'm leaving that fully open. Sometimes there's a switch right here that you mess between the two, and in that case, you can just shut the valve off to the pop-ups that way, okay? If you have a Jandy valve like this, remember how they work. The off, the closer the off is to that pipe, pointing at that pipe, that's shutting that off. So if this was a Jandy valve, I'd want the off either here or down here to signify that that's off, and then this one would be, the off would be out this way some way so that it's not hindering the flow. So that is the two basic ways to disable your pop-ups without doing a ton of work, okay? The third way is a little more involved, and I don't have any examples of pools that I want to take apart because I don't like taking these kind of things apart and getting into the guts, because once you start doing that, you can create all kinds of problems. So I'm going to talk to you about how we break it down and then how to put it back together, but I'm also going to go back inside, take some pictures, and show you what the guts are and how to take care of it, okay? Alrighty. So for some reason, you've got an old pool, and usually this is found in older pools where the pop-up systems were brand new in those days, and so what they did was they had all the return flow going to the pop-ups, and they weren't required to have a return flow to the returns in the pool. So I've seen on very rare occasions old pools like that, and for whatever reason we need to disable this and but still allow for flow. Now you could, like I said before, you could run this, get it to where the pop-ups cycle to the steps and hit the pause, and that should stop it. But sometimes this pause button doesn't work, in which case, or for whatever reason, you need to take the guts out. So first thing you do, number one, make sure there is no possible way that that system is going to come on, right? So if you've got an override switch, use it, okay? But make sure that it's not going to come on while you're doing this work, or you're going to have a mess on your hands, all right? I'm going to come over here, and it doesn't matter what type you have. If you have a top feed, one that feeds up here, there's a pipe that comes up here and it has a nut up here. You'd have to unscrew that so when you get this dome off, you can take it off, okay? All right, so first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna come to this belly band right here. This is a belly band, all right? And you're just gonna unscrew this nut. Just unscrew it completely. It's pretty long, it's pretty threaded, got a lot of threads, so you're gonna unscrew it completely, and then you're gonna break this free. Sometimes you have to tap it, but this will come out, and then you're just gonna split this apart and it'll just come off, okay? Once you do that, this whole top part will lift off. You might have to wiggle it a lot. Don't grab it by this and just yank it, because you might break your pressure valve, okay? So just kind of wiggle it and get it free. When you open this up, understand there's a rim inside that has an O-ring, okay? The O-ring may be on the lid or it may be down on this part of it, but you want to make sure that that O-ring is clean, that the rim that it seats into is clean, that the O-ring is not dry and cracked or broken, and that it's lubricated, okay? So make sure you know that, so when you put it back together, you know that, okay? Then once you take it apart, we can start getting into the guts, and I'm gonna go inside, get some pictures, and describe how you pull the guts out. All right, now that you have the dome open, or the top of your actuator open, you're going to see something that looks somewhat similar to this. Now, it might be a little different in where the paddle wheel is, but basically they're similar. You're going to have a paddle wheel, and that's the thing that that person's hand's holding, and then inside are all these gears and guts. All of those things are going to need to be removed. They lift out very easily. You notice in the center, at the top there is a little spindle, a little metal rod. That runs all the way down to the base of that thing. You're just going to lift all those guts and gears out. And then once you do that, it's going to reveal the following. So you've got the guts and gears out now, and you're going to see something that looks like this. Now, it might be a little bit different, but if you notice on the bottom there, there's all those little valve port covers. And all those holes are the feeds to the different sections or zones for your pool pop-up system. So the tricky part is identifying which one goes to the steps. If you're going to convert to a vacuum, you're going to want to be able to identify it. One of the best ways to do it is just lift each one of those valves individually, take a hose with running water and run the water through that at pretty high velocity, and take a look at which valve or which pop-ups are opening in your pool. Once you identify the one of the steps, that's the one you're going to remove that particular cover for, and only that one, okay? If you want to just completely disable them and just don't care where the returns are going, then you can take all of those little valves off. They're usually glued in, so they're a little bit tricky to pop up, but you can usually break them off pretty easy, or just with a you know, like a pry hammer, just pry them off and they'll snap free. But usually I tend to suggest if you're going to convert to a vacuum and you're trying to do that, you want to find the zone for the steps. So that's what you're looking for. Another example would be this type of system where once you remove the guts, you're going to see, instead of little flaps like the previous one, you're going to see little balls. Similar thing, you just want to leave the balls in place that don't go to the steps and take the one off that goes to the steps. okay? And then that leaves that one permanently open so you have return flow, okay? But if you don't care to put a vacuum in your pool and you're just trying to disable the pop-ups, you can take all the balls out. But remember, you're not going to put the guts back in, all right? No matter what. So I just wanted to show you a couple more pictures of the gears, and you notice how they all kind of sit in one little plate, and so they lift out pretty easily. Just make note of this picture. If you notice how all the guts are kind of broken down here, you notice there's some O-rings there. One of those O-rings is the O-ring that goes around the rim of the dome or the cover for that actuator. So as I mentioned earlier, you're going to make sure that's lubricated and clean, obviously not cracked or broken, and make sure it's seated in place when you put it all back together, because you don't want any leaks in that dome. Remember, you're not putting the guts back in, you're just removing one of those valve covers inside, or zone covers, or you're removing them all depending on what you want to achieve. Okay, once you have gotten rid of the guts, they're all out, and you have opened up whatever valves you want inside. And again, sometimes you have to test it by flushing water through it to see which one is the actual steps, or you can pull all the valves out and that way just have everything, give you full freedom of flow. All right, but to put it back together, you just reverse the order. You're going to first take that lid. Okay, remember your guts are out, so nothing has to fit into anything anymore. So you want to make sure that O-ring is seated in its proper place and lubricated, and that the rim that it sits on and fits into is clean and free of dirt and debris. Then you just set your lid back on. Okay, remember which way it was taken off, so which way it was facing, and then you just reverse the process. Take this belly band, wrap it back around, thread it through its nut, and then cinch it up. And you might have to tap on these sides just to snug it in, but then you just tighten that down and you're good to go. Then you fire up the system and make sure there are no leaks. Okay, if there are, chances are you probably got an O-ring issue, and you're probably going to need to lube that O-ring a little more or clean the rim a little bit. Okay, so that's pretty much it when it comes to pulling the guts out of one of these pop-ups. Actuators, sorry, pop-up actuators. And again, if you have a top thing up here, you have to tighten that back down, and there's an O-ring on that as well. That will make sure it's lubed as well, because if you don't have that in place, it will leak too. Okay, so I wanted to show you an example of this type of actuator. Obviously, you notice the pump and everything, and the equipment is all over there. And this actuator is near the pool itself. So if you notice, this one again, it's gray. This is again a low profile one, but this is an example of a side feed. So the water is going from the returns over there from the pump and the filter through this into the side, and that turns this paddle wheel up here. You can see that, and then that in turn turns the gears. Now, remember I talked about the pause buttons, or the little pause toggle? This is one of those, this gray one, it has a pause here. So if you want to stop these gears from turning, again, to disable them, just lift this, and what that does is that stops, this one has a little leak, but that stops the paddle in there from turning, all right? And then again, taking it apart is pretty much the same as far as unscrewing the belly band. So I just wanted to show you an example of this type of actuator that has the side feed instead of the bottom feed coming up the bottom, or a pipe coming in the top, all right? Alrighty. I wanted to show you one more example of an actuator. This is one of those that is a top feed. If you notice, this is the return line coming across here, all right? And this I can dedicate to the spa, and then also heater bypass and all that kind of stuff. Don't worry about that. But this is what I want to show you. This is the pop-up actuator for this cleaning system. And again, the water feeds from the top down into this and spins the propeller or the paddle wheel in there, and then moves the gears. But again, most of these have a screw here on the hub, so you can undo that in case this needs replacing. But again, to turn this one off, there's that toggle. You just turn it this way, and that stops the water flowing, not flowing, but it stops the paddle wheel from turning. All right, so again, just a simple way of disabling this one if it's a top feed. But I wanted to show you that one. And then the water goes out through here once it goes through all the distribution channels. All right? Alrighty. So there's your examples. So I just want to make a quick point when it comes to having to remove the guts of your actuator for your pop-up system. Unless you're doing a repair and you're really wanting to repair stuff, which is not what this video is about, there's very rarely a need to do that to disable your pop-ups. The only time I would say you need to is maybe in some older systems, or maybe your system is plumbed in such a way that there is no way to, there is actually no return ports. I've seen in some older pools that had pop-up systems in them originally that, and this is way back, and it's very rare nowadays, that the pop-ups were the only way the water could return back to the pool. And so sometimes in those cases, you're going to have to at least freeze the pop-ups. Even then, you don't really need to take the guts out. As long as you have that pause switch, and the system's running, you can pause it at the steps, and then that would become your returns for your pool. But like I said, there's probably not a lot of reason to have to remove the guts from your actuator, based on the other two methods that I showed you earlier in this video. One thing to keep in mind though, if you're thinking about doing repairs and that's what you're looking for, something to remember: most companies that put in pop-ups, and including the manufacturers, most of them that I've seen, have a lifetime warranty. Now here's the rub on the lifetime warranty. It is the lifetime warranty on the whole pop-up system for the original owner of the pool. So if you're the original owner of your pool that has a pop-up system in it, I would suggest, if you're doing any repairs or anything like that, contact the company that put your pool in and see if it had a lifetime warranty, and if they will then do the repairs. Because if it does, they should be doing those repairs and even replacing the heads for free. If for some reason, and this has happened very rarely, but I have had a client experience this, the company that put in the pool is out of business, sometimes if you call the manufacturer of the pop-up system itself, a lot of times, or at least the times that my client has done it, that manufacturer has honored the lifetime warranty. So that's just something to keep in mind if it's something that you're wanting to repair. I'm not a fan of trying to do repairs myself on those, because it's kind of like, if you've seen some of my video on vacuums and the old Hayward Navigator, once you start taking it apart, it just becomes a nightmare. So if you are going to do a repair, I'd hire a licensed professional to do it and have them replace the entire guts. Don't just replace a little piece, and replace the whole thing. A lot of them come with an entire kit that then replaces all the gears, the washers, the spindles, the flaps, and everything. So that way you have a good, strong new system. Alrighty? Alright, so keep that in mind. So folks, that's my video on disabling a pop-up system. I hope it made sense. Obviously, if you have any comments or questions, please feel free to leave them in the comment section below the description of this video, or if you want, you can email me directly. Of course, my email address is going to appear right here at the bottom of the screen. It's kennypoolschool@gmail.com. Once again, kennypoolschool@gmail.com. Remember, as I said before, when it comes to disabling your pop-ups, make sure that the valve to the returns in your pool is fully open before you go ahead and shut valves off to the return flow to the pop-ups. That way you don't risk damaging your pool and your system with any undue pressure. So again, I hope that made sense. I want to thank you again for watching. Invite you to like this video if you did, and subscribe to this channel if you've not done so already. And also, please share this channel with your friends, everybody you know who might be looking to save a buck by servicing some basic things in their pool themselves. So until we meet again, thanks for watching. Remember, be safe, have fun, and always, always, always watch those kids and pets around water, and I'll see you next time.